Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition, if you will, of the Thrive in China Roundtable. This is our weekly roundtable where we touch on a variety of different topics associated with corporate administration in China as well as in Hong Kong. To give you a little bit of background on us and a little bit on the roundtable, the first thing that I do when reaching out to my audience in the community, and we have now in 2023 over 160 people subscribed to our Thrive in China Roundtable community. And for me, it's always lovely to understand what people's backgrounds are, what do they do? And I always try to start it off by asking, are you a newbie to China? Are you a startup in China? Are you an experienced China hand? If you have the ability and you're watching this live, let me know in the chat box, what stage are you in your China journey? Are you a newbie, startup, experienced China hand? Or alternatively, if you're watching this on replay, reach out. It always gives us a bit of an understanding on who is in our community and how we can tailor make our presentations. A little bit about myself. My name is Christina Kohler-Colucci. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. I realize now I have to update this slide, and I say this every week. I have now, in August, officially will be 20 years of corporate services experience, corporate services compliance in China. I solely work in the environment of inbound investment into China. We've helped over 600 international companies of a variety of different sizes with their market entry into China. So a lot of the pre-investment strategy development that has to occur. We then do the corporate services and the actual implementations. And then a lot of our focus thereafter with these clients is growing and scaling in market. And a lot of that has to do with the foundation of the business and making sure there's no obstacles that will arise along their journey. If you are interested or you're in the process of establishing a business in China, or you're looking to get insight into how that works, we have a variety of different webinars that are systemized administrative processes. And that's the beauty of China nowadays. A lot of things are systemized. So if you're interested in gaining access to these, just send me an email at christina@woodburnglobal.com and I'll send you those over. And last but not least, before we start today's roundtable, is if you haven't received a copy of our free book, The 10 Biggest Mistakes Companies Make in China, and you would like to receive it, also email me at christina@woodburnglobal.com. All right, to start today's roundtable. So we've done, this is officially roundtable number 17 in 2023. If you are interested in looking back at our past roundtables, as part of the community, you will have access to the link on our YouTube channel, which is a privatized channel, which has all of our published roundtables from 2023. The topic we're going to do today is a complex one. It is difficult to put this into a presentation format. So I have done my best to update you on what we are seeing right now with the golden tax system, phase 4, what's happening with e-fapiaos, and I will also be touching on what we are seeing within the tax bureaus, within the personnel, within the IT systems, and personal experiences that we are going through as well with all the changes that are happening. If you don't understand something, if you've got a question around something, use the chat box. Again, I want to reiterate, this is a complex subject and a lot of it might need to be tailor-made. Specific to you, what you're doing, where you're based in China. This is a generic presentation, a lot of which is focused on Shanghai, because that's where we're based, and that's where we're seeing a lot of changes with our clients at the moment. Doesn't mean this is not happening in other cities. I'm just referencing what we're seeing right now in the last 5 months in Shanghai. All right. So value-added tax. And again, I don't know what stage you are in your journey. I don't know if you're a newbie. I don't know if you're already transacting in China. So again, the presentation is quite generic and I'm starting from scratch. Okay, so a lot of this you might already know. What is value-added tax in China? Very simply put, VAT is a sales tax. It is one of the major sources of tax revenue to the Chinese government, which is why they impose very rigid rules and systems to tackle tax avoidance. In the VAT space, there is a lot of underreporting that occurs. There are a lot of companies and individuals that do not register themselves. And this is something that now the State Administration of Taxation is coming down harder on, and this is where the Golden Tax System Phase 4 is coming into play. All right. So how is VAT defined in China? And I really struggled with the order of all of these slides, guys, so bear with me if I'm going back and forth. How is VAT defined in China? There are two statuses, okay? So when you are establishing your company in China and you are in your startup phase, what we encourage our clients to do is to do a VAT simulation based on their forecast on what their proposed or forecasted revenue is, what are their costs, and what are their general administration expenses. Why do we do that? Because in the end of the day, we're not trying to avoid VAT, we're not trying to evade any form of taxes, but we are trying to understand whether we are better off remaining as a small-scale VAT taxpayer or upgrading ourselves to a general VAT taxpayer. So if there's one action I can give any of you to do is simulate, okay? And if you need help on that, there are plenty of accountants out there in China. We do it ourselves. We help simulate what is the right status to have. Now, for some of you who are really trading, buying, selling, big offices planned, you don't even have to do a simulation. It's pretty straightforward to realize that the general VAT taxpayer status will be better off for you. But for those of you that are starting off slow, fewer transactions, you might not necessarily have headcount. You might not necessarily have a proper office. That's where the simulation really comes into play. So if you're kicking off from day one, big transactions occurring, pretty easy to say general VAT. If not, this is where the simulation is important. So let me explain the two statuses to you. All right. When you set up your company in China, your first status as a newly incorporated company is as a small-scale VAT taxpayer. The point of a small-scale VAT taxpayer is that you cannot, I repeat, you cannot offset VAT on purchases of goods or services. Okay, you cannot offset. So ultimately, what this is implying is that as a small-scale VAT taxpayer, you should not be having a lot of purchases of goods, services. And by this, I mean, for example, if you're going in a business center, you're not purchasing equipment, office furniture, computers. You have none of these startup equipment pieces, okay? And even if you did have that, the downside is you can't offset the VAT that you have paid on those purchases with the VAT on revenue. Okay, so as a small scale taxpayer, this is where the simulation is critical. It's to understand whether you need to offset the VAT on purchases and on the purchases of goods and services. The small scale VAT taxpayer, you are at the first level. The second status is the next level, which is where you become a general VAT taxpayer. As a general VAT taxpayer, you can reclaim or offset the VAT on purchases of goods and services, okay? That's the biggest difference between the two statuses. What you need to understand is that you can stay as a small scale taxpayer forever. The minute you become a general VAT taxpayer, you cannot move backwards. You cannot move down the level. You are at that level forever. Again, why I'm recommending everybody to do the simulation. Now, there will be certain triggers where you are being forced and pushed to be upgraded. And I will touch on those when I explain each of the statuses and categories, okay? Another point I will just briefly mention, I'll mention it later as well, though, is that a small scale VAT taxpayer pays VAT quarterly, and a general VAT taxpayer pays it on a monthly basis. All right, so those are the two statuses. I want to reiterate, homework for everybody, if you haven't done it, is simulate what you think would be the better status for you. Okay. And if you are a small scale taxpayer, it's I always say, because profits tax is declared quarterly, just do a simulation every quarter. Where are you standing? Just so you know that that this homework is being done on a quarterly basis, you have an understanding where you stand in the VAT spectrum. So if you do it every quarter, that just gives you the answer, yes or no, we should upgrade or not upgrade. Okay, now comes a bit of a lot of writing, but these are my notes to tell you what I think is important and what you should know about the golden tax system. Okay, a bit of a history lesson. The golden tax system was set up in 1994 in China to regulate the VAT compliance and VAT payments in China. Now, we are talking about a system that is over 30 years old, right? So this has been a work in progress since 1994, okay? The golden tax system was established to centralize every individual and every company's VAT declarations, okay? And obviously in 1994, we didn't have the IT systems we have nowadays, which is why the golden tax system has gone through phases of development and changes. We are now in 2023 implementing phase 4. And the reason for this topic today is because in the last 5 months, I've seen this implementation. It's affected me and it's affecting some of my clients. Okay, so let me go on to the next slide. I'm reading my notes, if you will, that I don't forget anything, so bear with me. Okay, so how it works in China in terms of VAT. In the rest of the world, you will take an A4 piece of paper, either in Word or in Excel, and create an invoice, right? That's what everybody does. You might then develop an ERP system where that invoice is created automatically based on a few things that you jiggle in the IT system, and then you print it out in a PDF format and send it out to your customers, right? In the Western world, this is how invoices are created. In China, an invoice is called a fapiao, and from now on, I'm going to be using the word fapiao. A fapiao is an official piece of paper where you purchase the booklet from the tax bureau. You don't create anything, all right? It's already created, you're purchasing it, and then it gets more complicated, and I will explain those details later on in the presentation. But what I want you to understand is that these fapiaos you purchase from the tax bureaus, and they are in a paper format, okay? So it's an actual paper. Now, what people don't necessarily understand is when they should be issuing the fapiao to a customer, when they should actually be pushing suppliers to send fapiaos to them, because this affects your whole accounting system. Because under the Chinese accounting regulations, you book your revenue based on fapiaos issued, formally issued, and you base your purchases on fapiaos received, which does not necessarily reflect the true standing of your organization, like it would in the Western world. Okay, and this is where people, a lot of people from Europe, the US, etc., when they read their financial management reports, they are through a mind bubble because they don't understand revenue levels, because it's not at all what was projected or what they believed is according to sales pipeline, predominantly because those Fapiaos have not been issued. Okay. So that's where things get into confusion. Now, what I want to highlight in today's episode, I want your takeaways to be, is that phase 4, and on my last slide, I did say everybody needs to be patient, including myself, with this. There are a lot of topsy-turvy things that are happening right now within the tax bureaus. What I want people to know is that it is a change in the operational way of handling your taxes. There are no changes according to your tax burden. There is no change according to your tax code. It's just how you're handling operations. Okay. So people do worry with phase 4 that suddenly the tax authorities are going to increase VAT rates. If any, eventually they should actually decrease VAT rates. It won't happen overnight, but that is the rumor, that at some point there will be another level of decrease. And in theory, over time, because of the efficiency of this new IT system that is developing and the e-fapiaos that are coming into implementation, everything will become so much more efficient that and companies will be obligated to pay, and they can be caught if not paying, that they will reduce the rates. So if everybody does as they should be doing, the good news is rates should go down. Okay, but if we're all evading taxes and avoiding taxes, that won't happen. Okay, so I mentioned these points basically, which is that the new system is a new IT system that will change the way tax bureaus, taxpayers interact, versus just communicating right now within your tax declaration week. You are able to now communicate on a daily basis. E-fapiaos, although it is something that started in 2021, we are seeing major changes in Shanghai regarding this. Again, you have to be patient on that, and I will touch on that later on. Once we get into the e-fapiao system, the whole authentication and verification of e-fapiaos will become much more simplified. And last but not least, with this whole new IT system, it will be much easier, especially for SMEs, to be able to take advantage of tax preferential policies, whether it's for corporate income tax, VAT, etc. So, like I said, the golden tax system phase 4 is something that I see as a positive. I don't see any of this as a negative. It's just there are hiccups at the moment that we all have to be patient about. So that's the golden tax system. If you guys have questions about the golden tax system, put them in the chat box. But I do want to start now on the actual intricacies around VAT. Okay, so as I started off, there are 2 statuses in relation to VAT in China. What is your company status? As a small scale taxpayer, the normal applicable rate is 3%. With the surtax and rounding off, it would be 3.5%. The 2023 applicable rate is still at 1%, rounding off to 1.5%, including the surtax. Why is there this preferential policy in 2023? It is still COVID related, trying to ease the tax burdens for small scale taxpayers. Okay. Now remember, the key thing about small scale taxpayers is they cannot offset the VAT they have paid on purchases of goods and services. Okay. In addition to that, another disadvantage for small scale taxpayers is that they do not have the ability to issue special VAT invoices to customers. It is not automatic that they have this ability. What they can issue is just VAT general invoices. When you issue a VAT general invoice to your customer, they cannot offset the VAT off of that invoice. Okay. However, if you go to your tax officer and you say, you know what, 95, 98, or even 100% of my clients are all general VAT taxpayers, I need the ability to issue special VAT invoices, they will grant that to you. And the beauty is, with the new IT system coming out in phase 4, you don't even have to discuss this with your tax officer. You can just do it through the IT system. It is not happening yet, so don't get too excited. But the goal is that it will happen, okay? In the interim period, you still have to go to your tax officer, ask for it, and then be able to issue it from the tax bureau itself, okay? Now, what I want to highlight, and again, this has been a policy that was initiated through COVID, but it also seems to be a policy that is going to remain, is that let me start with the bigger concept. If you've got revenue, and because VAT for small scale taxpayers is paid quarterly, if you have a revenue in a quarter period of less than 300,000 RMB, actually you're exempt from paying VAT completely. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. And if you are in that situation and you haven't been able to take advantage of this policy, it could very well be that your tax officer has missed this, to no fault of their own, because there's a lot of changes that are occurring within the tax bureaus right now. But if you now know this information, do use it and go talk to your tax officer about it and see whether refunds can be provided or VAT can be credited for future terms, okay? So remember, fiscal year in China is January to December. So you're looking at the quarter periods, January, March, April, June, etc. Look at the VAT. If you've got revenue less than 300,000 RMB, you're exempt from paying VAT. Okay. Now we're moving to the next level, which is the general VAT taxpayer. Before I start, I want people to be aware that there are certain triggers that may force you to upgrade yourself from a small scale taxpayer to a general VAT taxpayer. The triggers can be twofold. One, it could be that you have 3 months of consecutive revenue that is over 500,000 RMB, which will automatically be a trigger system with the tax bureau, and you should get a call from your tax officer to upgrade, and they will give you a time allocation of when that upgrade must be done. Alternatively, if you hit a trigger in a fiscal year of revenue of more than 800,000 RMB, that will also trigger the system, and your tax officer should also be giving you a call to say you are required to upgrade to the general VAT taxpayer. Okay, so there are these two triggers that could potentially happen. There is nothing for you to do. So I want to highlight this. If you don't get that call, leave the status quo, unless, of course, you're not optimizing your VAT situation, which is why the simulations are important. Okay, if you don't get that call, keep the status quo. It means the tax office and tax bureau has missed out on stuff. We want to make sure that you are always in a tax optimized status, unless the tax bureau is telling you upgrade now. Okay, then you're forced into that situation. I was going to mention something else, and then I missed it. Oh, and I also, so this is what I also wanted to mention, is that the simulation, when you do these simulations, if you feel at any point based on the incoming revenue and purchases that it makes sense for you to upgrade, you can upgrade at any point in time out of your own initiative. You can go to your tax officer and say, I've got these contracts up and coming. I want to upgrade in order to be able to tax optimize my VAT situation. So you can go at any point, but of course, if you remain quiet, those are the two triggers that will stimulate you to get that upgrade. Okay. Now, once you're a general VAT taxpayer, there is no turning back. You are a general VAT taxpayer for the remaining China journey. Okay, until you decide to liquidate or close down your structure. General VAT taxpayers, the formula is simple. It's output VAT on sales minus input VAT on purchases. Okay. The general VAT taxpayers, they automatically issue VAT special invoices. Okay. VAT special invoices basically means that your customer has the ability to always deduct VAT with that invoice. Okay. And your customer has 180 days to make that deduction. If they don't make that deduction within their own VAT system, that's their fault, has nothing to do with you. Okay. But keep that 180 days in your mind, because that's the limit. So you've got 180 days. Why you would wait 6 months might be for strategic reasons to, again, optimize your VAT stance. Our recommendation from the accounting perspective is to do the deduction at the moment that things are happening. Okay. Don't make your life more complicated. We are all human. We all forget things. And if we don't track things, mistakes will be made. And the mistakes might be more dire and penalties might be higher than if you just do things right at the moment. Okay. So by all means, be strategic, but make sure you've got a tracking system in place. To give you an understanding of the rates, so for people that are just generally trading or selling general goods, it's 13%. Okay. If you are in a business service, so if you are an accounting firm, law firm, if you are a marketing firm, recruitment firm, whatever service industry, it's at 6%. Logistics providers, so transportation services are at 9%, processing repair at 13%, logistics 6%, agricultural is 9%, food, edible, vegetable oils are also at 9%. Now, like I said, these are the rates since 2019. No changes have been made since 2019. But the idea is that when this phase 4 is implemented, when the IT systems are working smoothly, then ultimately the rumors are that these rates will start going down. Okay, so I can't give you a date on that. It really depends on how the tax bureaus get their act together to fix some of the IT issues and to roll it out nationwide, right? Okay, types of Fapiaos, and this is probably where I'm confusing a lot of people in terms of what they are. So there's 2 types of Fapiaos. Like there are 2 statuses, small scale and general VAT. There are 2 types of Fapiaos. Now I want to highlight here, I have not mentioned anything about e-fapiao because these are the same for e-fapiaos. Okay, I'm going to explain what an e-fapiao is, but I just want to highlight these types of Fapiaos remain the same, whether it's a paper Fapiao or whether it's an e-fapiao. The general VAT Fapiao is predominantly what is issued by small scale taxpayers in 99.9% of the cases, where you don't have the ability to deduct the VAT from a general VAT Fapiao. It is ultimately, as I wrote here, just a piece of evidence of payment. Okay, just like you issue a PDF invoice in the Western world, that is a proof of revenue, right? Same concept. The special VAT Fapiao is what small scale taxpayers can apply at the tax bureau for, and it's what general VAT taxpayers can automatically issue. And the special VAT Fapiao is used for VAT tax deduction purposes by your customers. Okay, these Fapiaos require a lot of information, and I hope I do have a sample. I'll explain what has to go on there. All of that information has to be 100% correct. One mistake in a telephone number, one mistake in a bank account number, one mistake in a tax code, one mistake in an address, you can scrap it. And scrapping invoices is not an easy task, okay? So whether you're issuing the paper or the e-fapiao, detail is of the utmost importance. Now, what I want people to understand and how serious this all is that the Fapiao is a requirement by law. It is what is used for the accounting policy to record your transactions. Now, I have written here very delicately, if a company fails to produce a Fapiao when requested by a customer. Obviously, if a customer does not request a Fapiao, it can happen. There are many reasons why they would want to do that, so they don't pay taxes. The world where this is very, very popular is in leasing property. So I remember back in the day when I first arrived in Shanghai, my real estate agent was saying to me, Christina, do you need a Fapiao when you pay your rent? And I was like, I really have no idea. Do I or don't I? And automatically you get a 5% discount. In those days, it was a 5% discount because there was business tax. It was a 5% discount on your rental amount if you didn't need it. So who wouldn't go for that, right? But if you are an expat and housing allowance is part of your salary package, you can be assured you need a Fapiao. All right. So the same with any trade transaction, anything like this. I want people to automatically understand that the Fapiao needs to be issued if you want to remain in absolute compliance in China. The Fapiaos are what you record in your accounts, and they are the proof that a transaction has actually occurred. Okay? If you then decide to work in a world of being illegal, that's totally up to you. You just have to understand how that can impact you, impact your business, impact the growth and scale of your organization. Okay? Now, this is what a special VAT invoice looks like. You've got the buyer's information where you have to have the company name, address, bank account information, telephone number, and the TIN code. So the TIN code is your business license code, which is also your registration code at the tax bureaus. All of that information has to be provided. You then have the breakdown. You will see that little chop, the invoice seal, that is the Fapiao seal that then has to go on the Fapiao. Now this is, as you can see, or maybe some of you haven't seen it, this is a very old Fapiao because it says 17%. This is an old Fapiao, okay? It's from 2017. So it's just to show you what one looks like, okay? That hasn't really changed. And I also want to highlight that this special VAT invoice, this is a Photoshop that I've done, okay? The e-fapiao looks like this as well, okay? So whether I'm talking about a paper Fapiao or an e-fapiao, this is the content that is on it. This is what it looks like, all right? Now, what is an e-fapiao? This is a very hot topic because this is what I'm seeing in the last 5 months in Shanghai. The paper Fapiao system has been in place forever. I mean, since I've been in Shanghai 20 years ago, it's been in place, okay? However, since 2021, the e-fapiaos have been coming into action, particularly in retail, food and beverage, like if you go to restaurants, travel, things like that. It's becoming that it started off with those industries where the e-fapiao was used and was tested, okay? Now, as of this year, myself, as well as each of my clients, one by one, based on their tax district officer, they are being requested to give back all of the paper Fapiaos, give back the VAT printer where you print out the VAT invoices with the data on it, to go full on in the e-fapiao world. Okay. Now, this is something that I have only seen this year, and it is slowly coming into fruition, and it is your tax officer who will proactively reach out to you to start requesting this change of paper invoices going back, VAT printer going back, and going fully in the e-fapiao world. If this has not happened yet, just know at some point it will happen. Okay. Now, there are documents you have to sign off on to be able to initiate all of this. So if you are in the board of directors, if you are a legal rep, you will become aware of all of this because you have to sign and chop off your approval that you agree to switch and move into this world. Okay. The e-fapiao is an electric fapiao that again will be issued from the VAT system. So I probably haven't mentioned this yet. When you incorporate your company, you go and meet with your district tax officer. That's when you do your tax registration. And that's where the conversation begins about what is your business model in China? What transactions are you doing? Are you trading? Are you service, etc.? They then understand a little bit more about what type of VAT is going to be applicable to you. Is it based on goods? Is it based on service? Is it based on a multiple array of different things? They'll also look at corporate income tax, stamp duty, and other aspects. And it's at this point where they will allow you to purchase the booklet, the paper booklet of fapiaos. You also have to download the VAT software system. And back in the day, you also had to purchase a VAT printer, which might still be the case for new incorporations. We are not clear on how that's going to look like. But you had to buy a VAT printer where basically the VAT fapiao in blank was put in this printer. And then when you put the instructions in the VAT software system, it would print out. And then you would send the various things off to your customers. Okay. The e-fapiao is basically something that just comes directly from the VAT software system. Okay. Now, why am I happy as an accounting firm to go in the e-fapiao world? I am happy because, first of all, controlling the paper fapiaos for our clients was always a headache. Paper fapiaos in China are considered literally like gold. That's why it's called the golden tax system. There is a value to each of them. If you lose them, the penalty is the value of that fapiao. Okay, and each fapiao has a value associated with it. So these were not jokes. And back in the day, when I was incorporating entities in 2005, 6, 7, there were cases where even the tax officer would come to your office to see whether you had a safe in your office that they could prove that you were storing your fapiaos in a safe location and that there was no risk of anything being stolen. And that's how serious they were taking it back in the day. Okay. They don't have time for all of these things anymore. There's just not enough personnel and resources to go visit and check. But if you do lose them, there are severe penalties. Okay. For me, that there was always this risk and fear, and especially if my clients decided to take over themselves. I know it's not my responsibility anymore, but I do know if it gets stolen, it comes back to us saying, fix it. And the fixing is never easy, right? So the world of the e-fapiaos, just from a bureaucratic management perspective, is definitely easing my mind a lot. Okay. Another thing is counterfeiting. There is a black market in China for the paper fapiaos. What we always recommended is with the paper fapiaos to verify the fapiao number to make sure that it was real and that it is actually owned by the supplier that is giving it to you. Why? Because again, especially in the leasing world, landlords would have this black market fapiaos and give fake fapiaos to their customers. And the downside to all of this is that if you have a fake fapiao in your filing system and it's recorded within your VAT system and you're caught, you will have a penalty, even though it's not your fault. But because you didn't verify it, the penalty can arise with you. So this is again why I am happy that we are going in this world of e-fapiaos. Not to mention storage. Many of you might not know this, but you need to keep all accounting documents for a minimum of 5 years. And if you would just want to see with one small company, the amount of fapiaos that you collect in 1 month, you will probably have 2 books, if not 3, if not more, depending on how large you are in size. So just from a storage capacity now, people don't have to outsource storage facilities and things like that. As a startup, this might not be your concern whatsoever, but when you get longer in this China journey, that is a huge concern about storing all of this stuff. This now is in the system and it is stored in the system, okay? These e-fapiaos, from a technical standpoint, should prevent any form of counterfeiting. It should also be using electronic signatures, as well as the electronic fapiao seal, okay? Which means that when you are issuing it, it is already verified. It means also your accountants are doing much less work in terms of verifying every single fapiao, okay? So this is why, again, I am pleased with these developments. And I have to say, I am a guinea pig. We haven't started yet. We're going through the phase of the applications to start doing it. I do know there are issues with the IT systems, and I will touch on that. But I am curious to see how the development will be in 2023, and just from an internal workload standpoint, how this might lower everybody's jobs, okay? As I mentioned earlier, the e-fapiao is also divided into the general VAT e-fapiao, where you cannot deduct it, and the special VAT e-fapiao, where you can deduct the VAT, okay? And keep in mind, whereas the paper ones, you had to print from a printer, these are automatically issued as a single data file. So ultimately, you are printing it out on a Word document if you need to print it out. Ultimately, you don't. You can actually just automatically attach it into an email and send it out to your customer. Okay. I do know that from an auditing standpoint, you will be required to print all of this stuff out still. But at least you're only printing out one sheet of paper, one fapiao, which is one single data file, versus several paper fapiaos. And I'll explain what I mean by all of that, okay, a bit later on. Now, what I want people to take away from the e-fapiao system is that, one, the goal of the tax bureau in China is that the e-invoicing system will be officially implemented nationwide in 2025. Okay, by January 2025, the whole country will be in the e-fapiao system. Whether that's actually going to happen, we don't know, but that's the goal they have set. Okay. And I do want to say that as of January 23rd, it is definitely coming into Shanghai. Whether you're service or trade, it is happening right now. And I expect that by the end of 2023, almost all of Shanghai will be done. That's why you've got to wait for the phone call from your tax officer to wait for this to happen. And they're doing this in 10 different provinces right now, okay, for 2023. So, I will leave these slides a little bit. This is a lot of work, a lot of just blurb that I wanted to remember, but I've touched on all of these aspects already. Another thing, and I've highlighted this already, is fraud. The whole goal of this e-fapiao system is to eliminate fraud, is to eliminate the black market of fapiaos that exist, okay? There were numerous ways, and what I've listed here is just how employees can initiate fraud on you, okay? There are other ways in terms of trade transactions and whatnot, but the fake fapiaos, substituting the nature of the fapiaos, inflated expenses, canceled expenses, expense splits, like all of these things are ways that employees have tried to implement or to earn off of the company, if you will, by asking for higher reimbursement levels. Everybody knows about these ways. That's why it's so important back in the day to verify each fapiao that was being received, to have good compliance procedures in place where line managers would approve expenses and really probably go through the expenses that the employees have said they've done, okay? I have to be honest with you, I don't have very many clients that go in that much detail through their employees' expenses. Okay, and there are occasions when we get the collection of fapiaos to do the bookkeeping, we see issues. But it's not automatic. There has to be somehow a link in our accountant's mind of things that we feel are not right, or it's kind of a gut instinct, and then we delve deeper into an audit to review it. So, you know, line managers should be doing their job to really make sure that these expenses are not fabricated, but are real. It is a way to eliminate it. The hope is with the e-fapiao system, we can minimize all of this compliance procedures, okay? Now, how to purchase fapiaos. Now, what I want to highlight in this is that although this section is focused on the paper invoices, the paper fapiaos, the same concept will apply with e-fapiaos. Okay, there might be certain variations that are created. I don't know yet what those actually might be, but the principle, according to my tax officer, is that it's all going to be the same. Okay, so if you are a general VAT taxpayer, okay, you're starting off your company, you go to your tax bureau, you go to your tax officer, and you say, I'm ready, I have customers, they want to pay me, I need to issue VAT invoices to them, I need to issue VAT fapiaos. You then go and you purchase a booklet. Now the booklet will have between 20, usually it's two types of booklets, one with 25 sheets, one with 50 sheets. Now what's annoying is that, I'm going to go back to the picture of the fapiao. This fapiao has a total value. Now you might be saying, yeah, it does. It's 59 renminbi 60 cents. Wrong. That's the value of the transaction. The value of the fapiao is 9,999 renminbi, which means that if you have a transaction of 35,000 renminbi, you will be actually issuing 4 paper fapiaos. One worth 9,999, the second one 9,999, the third one 9,999, and then the rest, the 5,003, into the fourth one. Which means that your booklet can run out really quickly, and it does run out really quickly. And that's where you then have to go back to your tax officer and say, I need more sheets. Right? Now, similar to a bank, I'm trying to make people understand in layman's terms how they think. You know, when you set up an account at a bank, the bank's going to say, I don't know you. You have no collateral. Why on earth should I give you credit? Why on earth should I give you a loan? I have no history with you. You are a complete stranger to me. This is what the tax bureau thinks. You're new in China. They know nothing about you. You've done 1 month's worth of transactions, and you're coming to me to ask for more booklets and more fapiaos? No. I need more proof that you're serious. Now, you might be wondering, there's no logic to this because our VAT payable will be higher if we issue more fapiaos. I get you. I completely understand you. But because these fapiaos are worth I can't explain it, are worth so much more than that. They are very rigid in terms of giving more fapiaos. Because they're scared of the black market, they're scared that you're going to sell them to other people, that you're not going to control them. Now, at some point, it does go absolutely absurd. And I understand that. I'm completely in agreement. You might have a transaction that materializes that is, I don't know, 700,000 renminbi, and you don't even have the fapiaos to issue it to your customers. It can get embarrassing, but for you, it's embarrassing. Generally, Chinese customers know this regime, okay? And they might just push you for it, but you might also find they don't push you for it because they get it. You have to buy more sheets. Okay, but for you in the Western world, it's like, you still haven't received my invoice, you know? And depending on your payment terms, i.e., what are your payment regulations, which we're going to touch on, I get it. It might stop the inflow of money coming into your account from your customers. So this can be a big issue. Now, in theory, with the whole e-fapiao system, you're not going to buy sheets. You're not going to buy booklets. And from what we've understood, the e-fapiao sheet should eventually simply match the contract value, easing again the system for everybody. Okay? Now, whether this is going to happen, whether this is for me going to happen straight away, I really don't know. I have a feeling as a starting point, I'm going to have to buy electronically a booklet, and I will be only given the ability to issue a certain number of e-fapiaos every month. I think that will be my starting point. Okay. So I want people to be aware of these limitations that are popping up and be prepared for it. I do not believe that we're going to avoid this system straight away. Again, in theory, January 2025, we should be free of all of this. So it's another year and a half of painful exercises. But I think they're doing a slow start with the IT system. So I will have probably 25 or 50 e-fapiaos that I can have as a quota, sorry, let me use that word, as a quota every month. And I have to manage like that. Now, what I do want people to understand is you can go to your tax officer to apply for more. What I cannot guarantee is whether your tax officer will reject or approve your application for more. It's a hit or miss. With some clients, we go literally every 3 days to do the application. We just apply. Every 3 days we apply. It's actually part of the sequence of tasks that we do, and we consistently apply. And there's no algorithm, there's no whatever to say when is it a hit or a miss. It's really up to the tax officer who reviews your application and says, okay, yes, I'm going to grant you more sheets that you can issue, or I'm not. Okay. But I do want people to understand they can increase that quantity. Okay. And you can apply as many times as you like. What I wouldn't do, and pardon my language, is piss off or frustrate your tax officer. So if he also comes or she also comes and says, stop applying, follow that. Okay. You don't want to cause issues with your tax officer. I always say Labor Bureau, Tax Bureau, follow the rules and the regulations. But have this open dialogue. If they say we reject, ask why. Most of the time they won't explain it to you. They'll say it's my superior who says no. Okay, can I talk to your superior? No. So sometimes you hit a block, all right? Not always the easiest of communication forms, but it doesn't mean you cannot try, all right? Now, the highest level of fapiao value is 100,000 renminbi. So when you start off your business, you're going to be at 10,000. Eventually, at a certain period in time, you will increase to a higher value per sheet. And that value is 100,000 renminbi. Now, like I said, when it comes to the e-fapiaos, I believe this system will remain the same until, in theory, 2025. It might happen sooner, I don't know, okay? But have the presumption that this will continue. So you get to a certain level, where you will have the ability to issue one sheet with the value up to 100,000 RMB. Okay, if you've got a transaction of 250,000, it means you are issuing 2.5 sheets. Okay, now the rule previously, and that's why some people might have it in their heads, is that if you had consecutive sales revenue months of between 300,000 and 500,000 RMB, you could have this upgrade to the 100,000. We are not seeing this happen, not since 2021. There's nothing written in the 2021 phase 4 document saying this. It's just in practice, it's not happening anymore. Okay, so we want people to be aware of it. We know this is all a nuisance. We know it's blocking getting money in some instances because you can't issue the Fapiaos. In some occasions, you can apply for special transactional amounts. Normally, if you are asking for a full amount upfront, and if the amount is really in the 6 digits and above, and I'm talking about the currency of renminbi, you can apply for special transactional Fapiaos. The value of each Fapiao will still be 100,000, but for that special transaction contract, if you will, you can get special permission. Okay. Now, what we have found also with these special transactions, and this is an IT system issue specific for Shanghai, is that you have to upload in the IT system your contracts. What we are discovering is that when you then want to make the VAT calculation and issue the VAT Fapiaos, that contract is specifically not connecting to the VAT system, which again is making a lot of issues, because in theory, when you're doing things through the IT system, it should happen overnight. It's not. It means then you then have to call your tax officer to say there's something wrong with the IT system, fix it. And right now, we are finding that it takes between 5 to 10 working days to fix IT systems. Bit of a headache, I'm not going to lie. So the only way to get around that is to get up off your chair, travel to the tax bureau itself, submit the documents in person to get it done. But then you do need CHOPS, you do need all the supporting documents to do that, to do that in person. So if this is occurring to you, where contracts that are uploaded are not synced or are not matching, and you cannot do your VAT calculations, your VAT payable each month, or you cannot get contracts approved, or you cannot do your tax declarations, it's because there's an IT system with the tax bureau. Contact your tax officer straight away. Don't wait around on this. Don't try the next day. Don't try again the next day and think that it's your Wi-Fi system. It's not. Get that fixed straight away. They are literally fixing things company by company, not by system, which is frustrating. So inform your accountants if this is happening to just get it fixed straight away. Okay. Now, if you are in e-commerce, if you are in retail, or if you are in trade, and you have been approached by your tax officer oh no, let me rephrase. If you are in e-commerce, retail, or trade, and you are in a situation where you've got high volume of revenue, you don't have enough Fapiao sheets to issue, it could very well be that your tax officer gives you the ability to then give you a quota of e-Fapiaos as well, meaning that you use up your paper Fapiaos and they will then give you a quota of e-Fapiaos that you can then in 1 month issue both of those. Okay. The reason why they're doing it is because they want to do that transition slowly for trade, retail, and e-commerce businesses to go into the e-Fapiao space 100%. Okay, so expect that to happen within this year, basically, that you will be full blown in the e-Fapiao space. Now, I want people to be aware of the options they have in terms of issuing Fapiaos. And a lot of this has to deal with then your negotiations with your customers. Okay. There are 2 ways you can issue your Fapiaos. And there's no right or wrong. It actually really will come down to what you develop as an intercompany policy and to what your customer is going to agree to. Okay. Option one is that you sign a deal with a customer, contract is signed, you automatically issue a Fapiao to your Chinese customer. Keep in mind that as soon as that Fapiao is issued, that's part of your output VAT, and it means that it is recorded in that month that that Fapiao has been issued. Now, we all know Chinese customers don't pay on time. Whether they are foreign invested Chinese companies, whether they are multinational foreign companies based in China, whether they're state-owned companies, the tendency is Chinese customers don't follow your payment terms. Okay, they will pay when it suits them. All right, unless you have strict requirements, like you say, I'm not going to start anything unless it's upfront. You pay me, I start doing the work. Right? So it depends again on your internal policy. So depending on when your Chinese customer pays you, which could be 30 days from the issuance of the Fapiao, 60 days from the issuance of the Fapiao, 183 days from the issuance of the Fapiao, right? It means that you have an imbalance of your cash flow because that Fapiao has already been recorded in the system and your VAT payable has been calculated with that revenue in mind. Okay. So you've got to understand this, how it can affect your cash flow. Okay. Now, you don't have to do it like this. People make the assumption they have to do it like this when they start up their business. You don't have to. You can take part of your Western knowledge and say, as option two, I would like to issue a pro forma invoice in Word, in Excel, however you want to create it, like you do in the Western world. I'm going to issue you a pro forma invoice. I'm going to wait for your payment, right? Which means that you're not recording the VAT anywhere. You wait for the payment. You then issue the Fapiao within 24 hours. That means the VAT is then recorded, but it also means as a downside that the revenue is recorded at a later date. Because in China, you cannot book a pro forma invoice. You have to book the Fapiao. Okay, so that affects your accounting system. In this scenario, in option one, the minute your Fapiao has been issued, you're booking it in the revenue for that month. All right. In this scenario, you're booking the revenue at the point the Fapiao has been issued. And this is according to Chinese accounting principles. Okay. Now, your question might be, Christina, this makes no sense. We need to do it according to the accrual basis. So when we issue the pro forma invoice, we should be able to book it in our Chinese accounts. You can. I'm not saying you can't. But what will happen is that your auditor at the end of the year will be like, this is not based on Chinese accounting principles. So we have to redo your entire Chinese books for the audit. And this is why a lot of companies have two accounting systems. One based on accrual, i.e. when is the pro forma invoice issued, and one based on Chinese accounting standards, when is the Fapiao been issued. And I don't see any of the accounting principles changing. So it's up to you to decide how you want to look at your management reports and view your management reports. Of course, if you do it according to option one, revenue is booked at the moment the Fapiao is issued, great. It's just that it might impact your cash flow because you have to, your VAT payable, that revenue VAT for that transaction will already be recorded. Okay. Another downside to this, option one, is what happens if the customer never pays you and you've got this open Fapiao and you want to cancel it. You have a time limit, 180 days. So if you want to cancel this Fapiao because your customer has never paid you, you've got 180 days to cancel it. Cancellation processes are very tedious. You have to do them physically at the tax bureau. I don't recommend it. You can do it, And maybe it is somebody else's job to do it, but it is a bureaucratic nightmare. Okay, so you want to minimize that as much as possible. Which is why, again, I say the better bet is perform an invoice, wait for the customer to pay, and then the VAT invoice goes out. But listen, these are the two options. There's no right or wrong. It really comes down to your internal philosophy in China. How do you want to view your management accounts? How do you want to control the payments received by customers? And when and how do you want to issue the Fapiaos? Okay. Now that you have this information, you should be going back to your accountants to understand what are you doing now? What is the system you're doing now? That you have transparency and clarity over it. And then decide if you want to make changes or not. Again, like I said, there's no right or wrong. Okay. So how does it impact your Chinese accounting? Like I said, you know, the Chinese accounting standard regulations, I call it the Fapiao accounting system, because that's what the auditors are looking at and checking on. Are your Fapiaos booked based on when they've been issued? Are the Fapiaos received based on when they've been received, right? When they've been issued by your third-party providers or suppliers, etc. So to implement an accrual accounting system is up to you. You can do it at the moment of doing your accounts. I just warn you of what the repercussions might be from your auditors. Okay. And just remember, it's based on the timing of the issuance and receipt of the Fapiaos. Okay. So another thing that I do want to highlight, especially if you're working with suppliers, is understanding when are you going to receive those. Doesn't mean that you pay that you necessarily get your Fapiao straight away. Other companies might have other internal ways. So it is something where get your finance managers involved to have those discussions with the other finance managers to understand what those internal policies are and have that open dialogue. Okay. Now, Fapiao compliance and management. Based on the Golden System Phase 4, things should be improving. Cancellation of the special VAT invoices should become easier, which means that if you choose option 1 for the invoicing and you need to cancel the invoice, in theory, things should be faster, where you can do it through the IT system. A big change has been the classification coding for goods and services, making things a lot easier, more variety available. That's part of the VAT software system you have, where there's a classification for goods and services, because there's different VAT rates based on the different goods and services. And then obviously the implementation of e-fapiaos. This is now popping up, not just in restaurants and retail sector, but now in actual B2B business industries and sectors. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for a bumpy ride. I'm laughing because that's all I can do right now. I mean, I could be very frustrated and angry, but I'm in a phase right now where for the next 10 days, we can't use our IT system for taxes, which means we're going to miss deadlines because there's no connection and syncing. Okay, there's nothing I can do except laugh. I've already yelled, not at my tax officer, but unfortunately at my team. Not their fault at all, but I had to let it out and vent. If you guys have to do that, do it, vent yourself out. There's nothing we can do. You guys just know IT system right now is malfunctioning. All right. The only thing that I want people to be aware of is that in terms of Fapiao compliance and management is that with this new development in the e-Fapiao world and this transition that's going to occur within the next 18 months nationwide, there's a lot of scrutiny by the tax officers on their companies that they're managing, on the content that is in the Fapiaos, whether it's paper Fapiaos, e-Fapiaos. They are looking at how you are managing the issuance of your Fapiaos, the receipts of your Fapiaos. They are doing VAT tax audits. Not on everybody, but if there is one suspicious sign, they will do it automatically. And they will do it for past years as well. So be aware of all of this, that there is more scrutiny occurring as this transition is happening. Okay. Like I said, don't, pardon my language, piss off the tax bureaus. The personnel as well is changing constantly. I think in the last 1 year, just for our company, we've changed tax officers 3 times. It's been a nightmare. And I say it's a nightmare because you have to start the whole background information again. And also in certain phases where we are trying to get internal contracts approved, manage overseas payments, dividend payments, and all of that, with the personnel changing, everything gets delayed. Basically, we've had twice now our tax officers say, well, I'm leaving in a month. I couldn't care less. Let's just wait for the new tax officer to come in. So it's frustrating. So if you are in that phase also where your team and your staff are saying that you've got changes with your tax officers, it's happening. Be patient, all right? Tips that I would like to give you all. Now, if you are outsourcing your accounting, you might not be able to do a lot of this stuff. But if the borders are now open and you're traveling to China and you are sending over your finance managers in that business trip, let them do some of these functions. Bringing over people from abroad, finance managers from abroad, will give them a lot of insight if they go to the tax bureau and see what the tax bureau actually looks like when they meet the tax officer in person. It does give you in a lot of insight. You know, China is moving forward in the digital space phenomenally, but you will still always have a tax officer. And having that communication and open dialogue is critical. And meeting them will give you just general insight and hopefully empathy for those that are dealing with these bureaus. All right. If you are doing finance in-house within your own organizations, I encourage you to push your accountants to do this more often. Meet your tax officers, visit the tax bureaus. Since COVID, everybody has gotten lazy because it's not really a requirement anymore. Refresh that. And I recommend you to refresh that. There was a fear in the past to hide things from your tax officers, hide the types of transactions you were doing. Not that you were doing anything illegal, but it was sort of like, the less I say, the better off I might be. I disagree with that. I think the more that you say to your tax officer, the more guidance you will get from them in terms of how to make your operations more efficient with the communication and interaction with the tax bureaus. Okay, so having that open dialogue is fundamental. In my team, the person who deals with our tax officer, they're on WeChat together. They have calls almost every other day to keep that dialogue open, to keep everybody accountable. And I love that system. And nobody gets angry. It's just catch-up calls, basically, that are occurring. When you're dealing with the paper Fapiaos, and eventually also when you're dealing with the printout of the e-Fapiaos, deal with these with respect, create an internal compliance procedure to understand where they're being stored. If you're dealing with paper Fapiao still, who is purchasing them, who is handling them, so you know where they are, okay? When it comes into the e-Fapiao world, who is operating the VAT software system, who's going to print out the VAT Fapiaos to record them for the audit, okay? And I get that we're all human, but one thing that I've noticed is that you have a sales team or BD team winning customers. Fantastic. No issues with this. These salespeople are also signing service agreements or contracts. Again, I have no issues. Where I do have issues is where the finance team goes to the sales manager to ask the other sales manager or the purchasing manager for financial information and data. This is where error arises. Please, please, please encourage your finance team to be in contact with the finance team of your customer to get accurate data, accurate information. Mistakes can always happen, typos can always happen, I get that. But the first place that we can eliminate misunderstanding is when finance talks to finance. Not sales talks to purchasing or vice versa, and then they're talking to finance. It's total misunderstandings. So make sure the communication flow between your customers, your suppliers, third-party providers, you're doing finance to finance. Don't have other people act as your intermediary. All right, you will get wrong information, wrong data, and then mistakes happen. So be as precise as you can be with the data and the information, but a lot of that can be eliminated with the context, okay? And finally, what I do want to highlight for people, especially those right now based in Shanghai, who will go through a transition, is be patient. Everything is taking time. Tax bureaus in whatever district you're located in are revamping personnel, and they're revamping the IT systems. If you need to vent, I'm more than happy to hear you vent. If you need an outlet, I get it. I've gone through it myself earlier this week. But be patient, okay? I do expect that this year will be a year of transition, a year of chaos, a year where the tax personnel are being educated on the new IT systems. They might not have the knowledge on how things work yet, okay? So they might have to go to their superiors, who the superiors then have to go to the other superiors to fix things or to understand things. So be patient for this. If I'm going to be truly conservative, I expect everybody to be patient for the next 18 months, hopefully until January 2025, where in theory, it should be blast off and everything smooth. Don't take my word for it, but that's my expectation. And we'll see whether that happens or not. So that's the end of today's presentation. So far, nothing's come in the chat box. Have I really been that clear on the information? If you do have questions, insert them into the chat box. I always love to hear what people's takeaways have been from today's session. And again, if you've got questions, let me know. I'll wait till the end. I just want to go through a couple of more slides. If you guys don't want to put your questions in the chat box and you'd rather have a one-to-one discussion, happy to do that. I don't send out copies of our presentations, but you will get the video that will be on YouTube. Give us a day to reformat it, upload it, and everybody will get a link to that video. They can review it as many times as they like, but I will not be sending out the presentations. And if you want to have a call to discuss your own situation, there'll be a link to my diary in that email as well, where we can then also have a call, okay? Last but not least, if people are interested, you're in the Thrive in China community. Next week, we're going to be talking about the legal and tax consequences of selecting your location in China. This is a big topic for me because people don't take these considerations in mind. So we are going to be talking about when you choose your location in China for your registered office address, when you choose your city, when you choose the district in that city, what could be the pros and cons from a legal perspective and a tax perspective that you have to consider, okay? Next Wednesday, same time, 1 p.m. Central European Time, 7th of June. You've already got the link. It's the same link as always every Wednesday. Come and join us. Still no questions have popped in. Well, in that case, I want to thank everybody for their time. I definitely went over time today. I want to thank everybody for their time, and I hope to see you next week. Take care and goodbye.